Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week,
suicide is preventable. We've all got the power within us to generate hope.
1 in 4 people have suicidal thoughts, and it's like, we can't talk about it, and I think it's that.
What we're trying to do by carrying this physical symbol of mental well-being around the United Kingdom is A, smash the stigma and normalise the conversation. People don't go and ask for help if they've not even recognised the magnitude of the problem.
It's something I can do for my dad, something in memory for him, and hopefully he'll make people speak about suicide more and how they feel.
Nobody's immune from suicide, and it's everyone's business.
The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. First and foremost, thank you to everybody who's given us wonderful feedback about the Lost Souls project. The last episode on the podcast feed, if you listen to one documentary this year, please make it Lost Souls. It was a huge piece of work to undertake to tell the story of more than 250,000 people lying and at real danger of being lost, forgotten, certainly abandoned and neglected in old mental asylum graves. A real national scandal uncovered by the Mental Health Monday podcast. Do check that out. On to something positive, though, that's happening actually on the day that this podcast is published, but it's ongoing into October of 2025. And it is an Olympic torch-style relay heading out across the UK. It's called the Baton of Hope, and we first touched on it on the podcast a couple of years ago when the co-founders Steve Phillip and Mike McCarthy were telling us about why it was such an important thing. Now, Mike's going to join us on the podcast this week. He lost his own son to suicide and helped set this thing up. He is so passionate about mental health, about suicide awareness, and getting the story out there. And that's what this week's episode is about. Is how can you start a conversation about suicide and then spread that conversation? Not so it just goes to you and I and a couple of other people, but that it goes right around the country. That's exactly what Mike is hoping to achieve with the Baton of Hope for the second time around, actually, after its first attempt in 2023, which was a huge success then. It's travelling from Blackpool to Northern Ireland to Scotland, then through Cumbria, West Yorkshire, through the northwest, down through North Lincolnshire, down to East Anglia, Northampton, Kent and Medway, Hastings, Basingstoke, Portsmouth. By the end of the month, it's done Jersey and Tor Bay, and on to Herefordshire, up to Wrexham, and then with a finale event happening in London, like I say, right around the country. And at the official launch, Mike and I sat down to talk about what he hopes to achieve with this year's event.
I feel very, talking to people here today and listening to some of the stories, I'm kind of feeling heartwarmed that Blackpool have been so engaging and so welcoming, and we really get the feeling, and this is one of the reasons why we're starting in Blackpool, that they're absolutely on the same page as us. They want to challenge the status quo. They're not happy with the fact, as our charity is not happy, that those suicide statistics have stagnated for almost 20 years now. And Blackpool has traditionally had a higher than average suicide rate, so we acknowledge that as well. But when we launched this tour, we invited people to put a bid in to host one day, one leg of the tour. We've got 20 locations, and Blackpool's bid was right up there. It was quite an impressive document that they submitted, so in a way there was no difficulty choosing.
We're in Blackpool today on a day where the sky is blue, the sea is blue, the tower is here in front of us. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's about 28 degrees. It's incredible. It's everything that you sort of picture of Blackpool. But there's another story of Blackpool, isn't it? It's a story of a working class town that's had some really difficult issues, that's got some real issues around poverty. And actually, if we're going to have the conversation around mental health and suicide, it's got to hit in a place like this, hasn't it? You know, we can be the world of academia, and central London can talk about it. Places like Blackpool have got to hear this conversation, haven't they?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. What we're trying to do by carrying this physical symbol of mental well-being around the United Kingdom is A, smash the stigma and normalise the conversation. people don't go and ask for help if they've not even recognised the magnitude of the problem, and if they then can't talk about the issue, then this horrible cycle is just going to go on and on and on, these never-ending revolving doors for people. So, it's called the Baton of Hope for a reason. We want to bring hope to places like this all over the country. When I found out after we lost our son Ross, when I found out that suicide was the biggest killer of men under 50 in the United Kingdom, biggest killer of women under 35 in the United Kingdom, it shocked me to the core. I never realised, it never crossed my radar. And I just thought, well, how are we going to ever deal with this if we're not talking about it? If there are no political debates, no conversations in the classroom, no lectures in the universities, and surely children who are leaving school now ought to know that the biggest threat to their own life is not cancer, not COVID, not road accidents, not drugs, it's themselves. They are the biggest threat to their lives, and we've got to start talking about that and being honest and challenge the status quo.
When people see the baton, and it's travelling right across the country, when people see it, what do you want them to take from it? If there's one step that they take after seeing that baton, what would you want that to be?
I think, again, the obvious answer is hope. When we set up the Baton of Hope, we thought, we're just a few bereaved dads, and thought, what can we do? How do we reach people? And we recognise that, suicide comes when all hope evaporates. And we thought, that girl in a bedroom on a laptop who's being bullied or abused, or the guy who's on his way to a sales meeting in his car and just doesn't want to be here. How do we reach those people and say, there are armies of people out here who care for you, who want you to stay, and to help them to recognise that they are not alone. The key thing that keeps me going and gets me out of bed every day is a phrase that I heard from an academic, and all of the academics and senior clinicians are pretty much in agreement these days. Suicide is preventable, and we've all got the power within us to generate hope. It's just smiling at a stranger, or just saying to your mate, no, how are you really? How are you really? Let's talk. Then we can all we're all in it together. Suicide, nobody's immune from suicide, and it's everyone's business. And this is what we're trying to do with the tour starting in Blackpool.
Mike is such an inspirational guy. Losing a son to suicide and saying, you know what, something needs to be done here. And there's loads of information about the Baton of Hope on their social media. I'll obviously get the tags to that in the podcast notes, but batonofhopeuk.org as well is a website which has got loads of information, including when the Baton of Hope is coming to a town near you. Now let's move on to those people who are carrying the Baton of Hope. And actually I caught up with Sam Southern, who does some brilliant work in this space up in the northwest of England and in Blackpool. And she does that because she lost her husband to suicide. And actually on the day that I spoke to her about her reasons for carrying the Baton of Hope and playing a part in bringing it to Blackpool for the very launch of this year's tour, it was the 5-year anniversary of her husband's death. Sam and I had a sit down to talk about why this was such a key issue still for her.
So I lost my husband, ironically, 20th of June 2020 to suicide. So I last saw him 5 years ago today. So it's a bit of a poignant day, I suppose. That drove me. I suppose it becomes a vocation. I was a nurse before, and I didn't realise how prevalent suicide was. And it broke us as a family. The actual aftermath is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, and I feel that, it's not spoken about enough. There's still a lot of stigma addressing it, and the support afterwards is crucial for people to heal. And I don't think you ever heal truly from something like this, but definitely to move forward within your own journey and space when your life's been devastated like that. So I walked with the baton in 2023 with my sister and my 2 youngest children, because I'm very passionate about having children involved in suicide prevention conversations. And it was one of the most powerful experiences And I came home and said to my CEO, I'm bringing that to Blackpool. And then the bids went out, so I applied for it. And that, I suppose, I just think this is different. Collaboration is key within suicide prevention, and people do work in silos, and it needs to stop. And I think this is about bringing communities together and driving things forward. And I think I'm very passionate about what it'll leave for Blackpool Wire and Field as a lasting legacy, really. And we need suicide prevention on the top. It's everybody's responsibility. So,
what is it about? Obviously, this baton is a physical thing, a little bit like the Olympic relay that's been carried across not just Blackpool and Lancashire, but it's been carried further afield as well. What is it about that symbolises for you? What was it that you felt when you were carrying it that meant this isn't just a bit of an idea, someone or a gimmick? It's got a real sense of heart to it. What was it for you about it?
Connection, hope. The fact that I think it was the first time in probably 3 years that I actually didn't feel alone, because your head's a lonely place. And I remember being past it and just emotionally bawling. And I'm not a crier. I cried a lot when I first lost Glenn, but I'm not much of a crier. It was so powerful. And there were so many people there that gave me hope on their journey. And I think it is connection, hope, people, the fact that you know you're not alone, which is really what community should be about. So yeah, it was one of the most special days, and I'm really I'm so proud to be project leading it. I'm so looking forward. I'm going to be holding it again in a minute, that baton.
The world that you're in now is a similar world to the world that you were in before you lost your husband, but obviously your experience and your perceptions of the world that we're in change significantly as a result of your experience. What do we do to bring the conversation out of the shadows so that it doesn't just become a conversation that you have after a bereavement? That the people who've gone through it, of course they all understand what each of them is going through, and every story is a little bit different, but how do we bring this story into the lives of people who haven't gone through it, either haven't gone through it and will never go through it, or haven't gone through it yet but might come up against it in the future? Because there's I sense a real need to have a normalised conversation. It's not about necessarily having like a toolkit in place for if it does happen to you, but understanding that it does happen to people, and it might happen to someone close to you, or it might happen to you yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody's exempt from dying by suicide, so I totally get that. I think the stories of the people are the power, training, education, but I think we need to rethink that. I think you need real stories, not PowerPoints, because that touches the hearts of people. I definitely feel open conversations, and I was doing a bit of research about, we're doing a puddle jump campaign for funding the day, because obviously we're doing it as voluntary, and trying to get into schools to get kids to jump in a puddle because it's got suicide on it is one heck of a task. And I'm like, wow, what about the children that are in there that are bereaved by suicide and it has affected their life? How can we not have these difficult conversations? Because talking about suicide doesn't kill people. It's actually the other way around, and all the evidence shows that. So I think it's education and getting and doing the right education. We need to look at training differently, not just PowerPoints in a tick box. I think everybody should be educated in suicide prevention. I think it should be top priority for safeguarding, because what we tend to do or see is people go in at when people are in crisis, and then sometimes that's far too late. It's downstream or upstream or whatever way we say it, but it's well before. 1 in 4 people have suicidal thoughts, and it's like, well, if that's that common and they're just flitting, that's like having a cold or a sore throat, and we can't talk about it. And I think it's that. So I think the more conversations we have and the more we talk about it, and pushing the barriers, like getting some more evidence. Why is it that we can't talk to children? Because my children can have an open conversation about it, and it shouldn't be just because they've lost their dad. And them children shouldn't feel stigmatised going into a school and not being able to talk to another child about the dad dying by suicide. So I think the whole system needs rethinking. But I do think it's education and open conversations, and it needs to be everywhere. There's some of the families that we support, because I obviously am the manager of Solace, the service I developed in empowerment, and some of the families we support will say, and these are professionals, I did not know suicide was the biggest killer. You know, you're more likely to lose your child to suicide than you are in a car accident, and if that isn't hitting home, then...
But you'd never let them get in a car without putting the seatbelt on, would you?
No, exactly. And what's that? The tools to help you through life.
And it's the education. It's
absolutely.
the education that you don't put your child in a car without putting their seatbelt on, and you spend a fortune trying to get these car seats to fit and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then that suicide conversation,
it can't happen because
happen.
we say suicide. And I just think the whole system rethinks, and this is about challenging that, really, isn't it? And putting it on the forefront and getting it out there, and that is massively what's needed.
Sam Southern there, speaking to me on Mental Health Monday. And I tell you what, it's going to be such an incredible thing to see so many people carrying this baton for so many different reasons. And some will run and some will walk, some will carry it on horseback, I'm certain of it. But this idea of it travelling around the country and then sparking a conversation, what's that about? It's about this. Where can I find out more information? It's about all of those things can happen as a result of this travelling around the country, the Baton of Hope. And actually, there's two other people I want you to hear from on this week's podcast as well, because they too have been affected firsthand by suicide. Rebecca and Eloise. Now, Rebecca lost her ex-husband to suicide. It's Eloise's dad. Now, Eloise is going to be one of those baton carriers on that first day. And I sat down with both of them to talk about why they wanted to get involved and how so soon after losing a loved one they were able to sort of get back on their feet and take some really positive steps forward. Rebecca first, then we'll hear from Eloise.
Suicide's such a dirty word and people don't like talking about suicide, and finding Sam from Solace Charity and then on to Baton of Hope, it was just shared experiences, and that there is light, and that suicide needs talking about and needs not shut behind closed doors. We need to talk about it to try and get the numbers down and to remember the people that we've lost to suicide.
Often when you go through an experience, you only then realise the scale of the issue of suicide. What were the things that stood out for you after that experience?
How many? The numbers are just on the up and the up and the up, and there's so little in schools. The schools don't know how to deal with the after effects of suicide, and that's what it is. It's the ripple after suicide that affects so many people that doctors didn't know what to do. If we hadn't found the charities, we would have been just lost, basically. So, but yeah, the scale of it's massive, but things like this are getting it out there and talked about, and hopefully stop people taking their own lives.
People talk to me a lot about stigma and breaking down the stigma. Is that something you experienced in terms of, did people know how to speak to you? What were those sort of awkward conversations? What did that feel like at that time?
People, if someone's died of, whoever dies, if you die of cancer, it's people know how to talk about it, but suicide, it's like, oh gosh, and it's as if it's catching. People don't want to say the word, but suicide can affect anyone. Eloise's dad had an amazing job. He was an amazing dad. You'd never expect him to take his own life, and it can happen to anyone. People think it'll never affect their family, but it does. It affects millions of families across the world. And something needs to change, whether it's people talking about mental health more in schools from a younger age, or that something needs to change, and hopefully Baton of Hope will bring awareness and make people talk about it.
What is it for you about the actual, there's an actual baton, you can actually see something, it's travelling, it's moving around. What is it for you that means that makes a connection with people?
Yeah, I just think it's like you say, seeing the baton, it's people are going to see it and talk about it and get that awareness out, and it's lovely for Eloise to do something in memory of a dad that's such a physical thing, carrying the baton in his memory.
How proud will you be when you see it carrying?
We've only just finished our exams. I cried yesterday for our last day of school, but anything makes me cry at the moment, so yeah, it feels very emotional. Yeah, but how far she's come in 2 years is unbelievable, and amazingly proud every day, which I drive her insane, telling her constantly how proud I am, but I am. 2 years ago, I never thought we'd be at this point where she's finished her exams at school, done really well, and carrying the baton in her dad's memory. I never thought we'd get to this point. We had a year of not leaving the house, so to get to this point is unbelievable. I'm a very proud mum.
Can I ask her a few questions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Eloise, thank you for speaking to us. What does it mean to you to be able to be involved in the baton relay and to be holding that baton?
I think it just spreads awareness, and it's something I can do for my dad, and it's just something in memory for him, and hopefully he'll make people speak about suicide more and how they feel.
What are your memories of your dad? What was he like?
He was really funny, and he was just really random. We used to do mountain biking together. We used to, in COVID, we used to go on our roller skates around here, and we had hockey sticks, and we just used to do so many random things. And I went shark diving with him in South Africa, swimming with seals. We just did loads together.
I did every adventure.
Yeah, we used to do kiting on the beaches, just skateboarding, everything. We're surfing in South Africa, loads. It was just crazy sometimes. We did loads, but yeah, he was a really good dad. Really good, yeah.
And a couple of years on from obviously losing him, it must have turned your life around, but you're still so young. Have you had a chance to process what's been going on? How is it you feel about losing him and obviously to suicide?
Well, the first year it was obviously really hard, and I didn't really go to school, and I didn't really care really. Well, I did care, but I didn't care about school at that point. But now, I went to a suicide conference with my school, and I'm doing this, and I'm trying to make it a positive thing to spread awareness. Obviously, it's still really hard, but if I can make it into a positive thing, then it's better. And with my exams, I've used it as motivation because I want to do well for him, and I just feel really positive about my exams and stuff. Just everything at the moment.
And you obviously get the opportunity to hold the baton and to be part of this relay. How do you think you'll feel when you're hitting the streets, pounding the pavements with that baton in your hand?
I think, I'll be really proud of myself, and I'll just be thinking about my dad and how far I've came and what I'm doing to hopefully spread awareness and make people speak about suicide and how they feel.
Is it a conversation you can have with other young people? Because people tell me a lot, the younger generation are talking more and more about mental health, but not everyone knows the language about how to talk about mental health or what you're supposed to say or what you're not supposed to say. How have you found sort of navigating that with either your friends or sort of people who you've grown to know as a result of your experience?
I can speak about my dad whenever. I do get emotional, but I can just speak about him. So because I don't necessarily talk about. I just talk about his life and how good he was. So my friends, they know what to say because I don't really get offended by many things. So they can just speak to me, and I speak about good things that we did together. So it's just like a normal conversation with them, really.
Absolutely. And for people who are sort of hearing about the Baton of Hope and thinking, I don't want to talk about that, or it's not something it can impact people in different ways, can't it? It can impact people when they maybe least expect it as well. Is this a conversation you think that we should normalise and that everyone should be equipped to sort of have?
Yeah, I think after people see the Baton of Hope, they'll feel able to speak about it because so many people around the country are doing this thing. So hopefully it'll be it should be normalised, but people think, loads of people are doing this and want to spread awareness, so hopefully it'll encourage people to speak about it more.
What a time, Rebecca there summing up, there was a time that they, couldn't leave the house as they tried to get their heads around what they'd gone through, and yet there Eloise will be on day one of the Baton of Hope tour, carrying that baton to remember her dad and to try and stop that pain, that grief from happening to other people. Really commendable that someone so young is getting involved. Thanks to Eloise and Rebecca for sharing your story. Before that, Sam as well, and of course Mike McCarthy, who is the co-founder of the Baton of Hope, which gets underway. If you want to find out more about the tour and the work that's going on there, the socials are a really good place to do it, but batonofhopeuk.org is the website. And yeah, if you're anywhere across the UK, chances are that this will be coming to a place near you. And, you know, pop down, show your support, applaud, you know, support the social media when you see that going out as well, so that other people in your area understand that it's coming to town. But what a great thing that can really spread a message of hope and the difference that hope can make. Thank you for checking out this week's podcast. As ever, we signpost you to various different services, and if you want to get mental health support where you are, a good place to go is the Hub of Hope, hubofhope.co.uk. You can type in your postcode there, that'll bring up services where you are. And of course, we always say, if there's an emergency right now and you need to take action right now, the number will always be 999. We'll be back very soon on Mental Health Monday. If you want to get in contact with me, Mick Coyle, you can do. Links to my social media on the podcast notes as well, where you can also get some more links to the Baton of Hope and the fantastic work done by Mike and the crew.